Okay, you were the visionary for introducing Stephen Ministry at DeWitt Community Church. Could you tell us, what is Stephen Ministry?
Stephen Ministry is a training program that was devised by Dr. Kenneth Houck. He was a Lutheran minister who was also a clinical psychologist, and he began to feel a little overwhelmed with the needs in his growing congregation. So he wrote a training program. His people that in his congregation that were trained were so impressed with it that they encouraged him to offer it to other congregations, and thus began Stephen Ministry in 1975 in St. Louis, Missouri.
Awesome. And is that organization still in formation today?
Oh, it is. And they have Stephen Ministry churches in 150 different denominations, not just 150 churches, but different denominations across the United States, in Canada, and in 30 countries around the world.
Awesome. And when did you become a trained Stephen minister?
I became a trained Stephen minister when we lived in Atlanta, Georgia, and were attending the Christian church in Atlanta proper, and then didn't get a chance to serve because we moved. So I was so anxious to be able to serve as a Stephen minister once we got settled.
Excellent. And what was your vision when you introduced it to DeWitt Community Church? When you entered our doors here and we didn't have it, what was your vision for what that ministry might look like?
When I approached our senior minister at the time, he was familiar with Stephen Ministry, and he knew how it could impact. So I didn't have to do much selling, is what I'm saying. I saw it as relieving some of the stress on he and our associate minister, because people immediately would go to the pastor for counseling and for support during difficult times. And a pastor can get bogged down and overwhelmed with all of those requests. And so my vision was that we could take some of that burden off of our pastors and give people in our congregation with those gifts an opportunity to serve, and therefore find meaning in doing that.
Right. And so tell us, now that we are celebrating our 15th year of Stephen Ministry here at DeWitt Community Church, tell us what you've seen over those 15 years transpire.
At first, I thought it was sad that we were only starting with a few people. But now I see it as building a very solid foundation. It grew slowly, which is, I think, a healthy thing. Eventually, we trained 32 people over that 15 years. And then we had, like Ron Buchanan came to us already trained. I was already trained. I have seen it change the culture of the church. I have seen people now asking to see a Stephen minister instead of the pastor. Or if they meet with the pastor and the pastor said, I think you need a Stephen minister, then they're very open to that. And that's been a cultural change for our church.
Yes. And we hear the language of Stephen Ministry very often, very commonly in our sermons, in our community here,
That's right.
in our events. How does that make you feel as the person who brought that ministry into the church?
It feels marvelous to have been able to be an instrument of God's working in this place.
Right. So talk about that a little bit, about being the instrument of God's working and the foundation of Stephen Ministry. We've talked to a couple Stephen ministers, and they explain Stephen Ministry that they are a conduit of God's work. How do you explain that to people?
Oh, it's hard to explain because it's sort of mysterious, right? God will lead people into your life, and you just know that there's a word that they need. It can be the person waiting on you in the grocery store. I remember a time when I was in Wegmans and buying a few groceries, and the person who was the cashier, I just said, I hope you're having a good day. And she broke down in tears and said, no, my baby's in the hospital. She's very sick, and I have to be here, and I wish I could be there. And I said, would you like to just pray about that? And I asked the person behind me in line to make sure that was okay. And they said, oh, yes. So we just said a little prayer right there. And then I continued to pray for that person. So that's kind of the way, once you become trained as a Stephen minister, you're very aware of people and their need around you. And so it isn't just your care receiver from church. It's whoever's in your path on that day.
And when we think about care receivers, which is terminology that all Stephen ministers use, and we think about how we're introduced and then the relationship that we develop by walking alongside each other, what happens when we close those relationships?
Oh, it's always sort of a happy sad. You're happy that they're in a place where they're ready to be without that person walking alongside them. You're a little sad because you've formed a very special, close relationship because you keep their secrets. That's part of Stephen ministry, that we are highly confidential, and you do not share what someone shares specifically with you ever in your life. You take it to your grave. And so because they've shared their secrets, there is a special connection that happens. So frequently you remain friends, and you just know when you see them that there's that special God connection that you don't have maybe with everybody.
Right. It's very special.
It is very special.
So as we celebrate 15 years, and we are so blessed for everything that's been accomplished over the 15 years, all the people that have been served by this amazing ministry, what do you hope and pray for the next years of ministry, Stephen ministry at DeWitt Community Church?
I would hope that it continues to grow, and that over the years, as those of us who are older need to age out, need to retire, that there are people to take our place, so that it is an ongoing ministry and an ongoing part of the fabric of our church.
Excellent. And so if there was one prayer that you could leave us with as part of our 15th celebration, and if you could frame it in a way that is a blessing for what we've had so far and hope for the future, what are a few words that you would lift up in prayer today?
Just a few words? Oh my. That God would continue to change lives of those who become Stephen ministers, which is one of my greatest joys. That I watch people's spiritual lives transform through the process of training. And then those people become our spiritual giants. So I would ask that God provide us with the spiritual giants we need to be that spiritual hub that can provide for the community when the community needs it. And not just our community, but like when the shooting happened across the street at Chili's, we were there, and we were among the people speaking words of encouragement. When a young person died, we were there and speaking encouragement to those that were waiting in the long line to greet the parents. That kind of outreach. I would like to see God using us in our community in mighty ways.
Awesome. Well, Kay, thank you for sharing your gift with us.
Oh, you're welcome.
15 years ago, but every day since, for training our Stephen ministers, for walking alongside all the care receivers that you have personally cared for, but also setting a vision for us to continue to grow our ministry here, to train other churches in the area, and to be the hands and feet of Christ in this particular ministry. You have been a blessing to all of us.
Thank you.
Alan, thank you so much for your time this morning. As senior pastor of DeWitt Community Church, would you tell me how the Stephen ministry has played an impact in our overall congregational care here over the last 15 years?
The Stephen ministry over the last 15 years has been amazing for congregational care for a church of our size. Just having one or two pastors be able to provide congregational care for hundreds of people is just so challenging. And Stephen ministry plays such an integral role in many ways. If people are hesitant or afraid or somehow they don't feel comfortable coming to me or to our pastors to talk about something that they're struggling with, a lot of times Stephen ministers can be a bridge, that it is someone who can help walk with them through a difficult time or grief or some sort of loss. And that is just a huge gift to our congregation. And I think our congregation has been blessed over these past 15 years to have such an amazing team of individuals helping and guiding people in our church.
Great. And what would be your vision as we look forward to the ministries that are growing here at DeWitt Community Church under your leadership and under Pastor Ben's leadership? What is your vision for the Stephen ministry over the future here?
I would love for Stephen ministry to continue to grow, to have more Stephen ministers, and to have more people receive care through our Stephen ministry. Also, I'd love to see our church start to help other churches, to have us be a site where we train Stephen ministers for other churches. I think one of the important things is to realize that as a community church, that there are other churches in our community who can hear our story and how God has blessed us with Stephen ministry, and to be able to share that gift with other churches. I'd also love for Stephen ministry to grow in such a way that we have all of our Stephen ministers caring for someone, but in a way that can help people be able to feel supported and nurtured. And I really think growing in our Stephen ministers, growing in who's receiving care, but also helping other churches be able to launch Stephen ministry. I would love to see that in our future.
Great. And I know we've done that with at least 2 here so far, so looking forward to doing that with more. So thank you so much for your leadership with our Stephen ministry, and we look forward to watching it grow even further.